Alright, this is going to be my short, informal presentation on respirators. Usual disclaimers apply. Don't construe this to be medical advice. If you have a medical issue, seek a licensed professional. This discussion is just purely theoretical, hypothetical. It's just presented as information. So don't take this as like a doctor literally giving you some sort of command to do something. Anyway, we're going to talk about respirators. What I have here, two N95s, and I have a sports mask that has an N99 type of filter, but it's actually not NIOSH certified. So the effectiveness of that product is sort of not exactly fully known, right? Anyway, this right here is a very basic N95. Essentially, what you've got here is a mask which forms kind of a housing, and then you have a filter media inside of this. And the important takeaways to have here is you have a sort of a metal band that you form around your nose. And you can see this one's actually been bent here and here to fit a particular person's face a little bit more closely. This material is very thin and it will work harden, become brittle, and possibly break if you keep bending it. You'll also notice that this little strap here has broken as well. It's very common with these respirators because historically this has been a $1 product. It's been a very cheap product that is typically disposable. Like if you have an industrial job, if you work with paint, if you work with sawdust and other environmental contaminants, you may go through several of these in a single day. And for years, it's just been understood that that's a simple disposable item, very commonly available. Of course, we live in a little bit of a different reality now, and people are actually talking about how to reuse these products. My discussion and general ideas on that, at least from what I've been able to find from doing my own research and talking to other people, it's somewhat of a significant challenge to actually clean these things without degrading the filter media itself. I know that Duke University is doing stuff like vaporized hydrogen peroxide. Other healthcare systems are looking into using like ultraviolet lights. But essentially, the problem that seems to crop up is if you start using stuff like chlorine or bleach products, it degrades the effectiveness of the mask. It starts destroying the fibers and it doesn't filter as well. So, we're getting a lot of questions on, well, how do I clean this thing? Well, fact is, it's actually pretty hard to clean it without degrading it. So, probably you're going to have to quarantine the mask and basically store it somewhere long enough for the virus material that's contaminated it to actually die if you're thinking about reusing it. And of course, one of the other weaknesses here too is these straps are particularly vulnerable to various chemicals, substances, ultraviolet light, etc. So they're going to break quite easily if you start cleaning it. And you could retie the straps, of course, or maybe replace them, but yet again, it's a very cheap disposable product, so you start using hazardous chemicals on it and you're going to run into this. Now over here, this mask has an actual exhaust valve. I think that the pertinent takeaway here is this makes the mask easier to breathe through, but if you're infected with a virus, that valve is not going to stop it from being spread into the surrounding atmosphere. So if you think you may potentially already be sick with something, probably going to want this respirator here. And then of course, got a sports mask, which has a high quality filter media inside of it. Has dual exhaust valves, so it's easier to breathe out of. The nose piece itself is not going to work harden. This is supposedly an unbreakable piece. And the mask itself is more comfortable. Problem is it's not NIOSH certified, and the effectiveness of it is going to be based on how well it fits your face. And that's a general talking point about all of these masks. You have two things to be concerned with here. You've got the quality of the filter. If it's an N95 depending on how that thing attaches, like how securely you've got it mounted to your face, it could be up to 99% effective. So you've got the filter media, but then you have the external part, basically your housing, the mask itself, this bit. And if you don't have a good mechanical seal, that filter is useless because now you're going to have air infiltration around the mask itself. Like, for example, if this mask is oversized and I fit it to your face, it's probably going to leak around the bottom, around your jawline, and it will almost certainly leak around your nose. So it's not doing you any good to have a very high grade filter media if the actual mask itself does not form a good mechanical seal. So you got to really think about that. Just putting one of these on is not enough. It needs to actually seal to your face, and as anyone can tell you, it's kind of hard to actually get a human face to seal correctly. You run into this if you've ever used a bag valve mask to ventilate a patient. If you have two providers, one of the official recommendations is you actually have someone physically press the face mask over the patient's face, seal it to their jawbone and to their nose, while the other person actually ventilates them. It's that hard. It's hard to seal around a mouth, a nose, and a jaw that can move up and down and forward and back to a certain degree. It's very difficult to get a good seal. So the other thing too is if you're wearing these, there's an entire procedure to putting them on and taking them off. For example, if I were to put on this mask and I take it off, I want to pull it off from the back. I do not want to be grabbing the front of the mask because God only knows what's on the exterior of these masks after you've been wearing them for a certain period of time. So you need to really be thinking about what you're doing with them. Another consideration is they're actually extremely uncomfortable. Even this black one over here, this Respiro, which is the most comfortable of the entire lot, it's still kind of stuffy, it's kind of uncomfortable, it's pressing pretty hard on your face if you got it on correctly. And that's doubly true of these actual N95s. They work by using an extreme amount of tension to hold the body of that mask as forcefully as possible onto your face to create that good mechanical seal. So you may find that they're almost completely intolerable to actually wear. Like this is not a fashion statement here. When you've got these things on, they're not fun. They're not pleasant. I don't think anybody actually likes to wear them. It can feel like you're being suffocated. I guess as far as reusing them, outside of industrial applications, it seems like in theory you probably could reuse them to a large extent because you're not actually getting the filter physically full of material to the point that you can't breathe through it. That's usually the issue in industrial applications. You get the thing covered in sawdust or some other contaminant and you physically cannot move enough air back and forth through the mask. I think in healthcare applications it's not so much of a concern. The biggest issue there would be getting some sort of body fluid splashed on the surface of the mask itself. And there's some creative solutions about how you can get around that. You could perhaps put a cloth covering or something over it. I mean, kind of goes without saying with this discussion that the fact that we're talking about how to reuse and maintain a $1 disposable mask should really indicate the ridiculous scenario that we find ourselves in. Like, this is a disposable product. We shouldn't even be having to do this, but here we are having this conversation. Anyway, I think I've covered a lot of this. Main key takeaways: mask has to fit your face, has to form a mechanical seal so the filter can work. That's the most important bit. Think about how you're going to take this thing off. Bear in mind it is a relatively fragile, disposable product. These materials here can work harden and break. Straps can break. Products like this, which may have an excellent filter, an N95 filter, they're not actually NIOSH certified to my knowledge. These are made by smaller companies that are not of the same scale as 3M, so they just can't afford to send that product off and have it go through all the regulatory hurdles necessary to get it certified. So as far as the effectiveness of what we might call like an aftermarket product like this, it's sort of an open question. It could be more effective than a N95, could be less effective. like I say, that's probably more dependent on how well it seals to your face than anything. Anyway, about covers it for now. Just post a comment if you have any additional questions.